evangelical community.
Okay, we are now on Facebook and we are recording. So, Mark,
What do you say?
take it away.
Can we mute everybody first? John? Thank you. Well, heated debates, absurdism. This is what we live with day and night. We are human after all. Thank God we have the opportunity to think, contemplate, reflect. Absurdly. And so welcome tonight to the Theatre of the Absurd. Things will happen that you may be surprised at. But before we commence with the really crazy stuff, first we would like to introduce you to Jeffrey Cyphers Wright, who's my co-host at this crazy lip balm. Jeff received his MFA after studying with Allen Ginsberg, and he's best known as a new romantic poet. He's also a publisher, critic, eco-activist, impresario, filmmaker, puppeteer, and artist. He is the author of 19 books of verse, including Blue Liar and Party Everywhere. His poems have appeared in the Cafe Review, New American Writing, the Brooklyn Rail, the Hurricane Review, Posit, and his recent work appears in anthologies such as Best American Poetry, New York Insiders, and Contemporary Surrealist and Magical Realist Poetry. His latest work, a book of sonnets, an artwork called Doppelgangster, is out from Mad Hat Press. And Jeff also recently won the Sir Vision James Tate Prize. That book is out, and he publishes the amazing Live Mag. What you got?
Thank you, Mark. Welcome to the Absurd Theater here. It's so nice to see all these great people celebrating this with you. Leah, Andrew, Richard, Cindy, our regulars, Tony, Kitt from Ireland. I think we got at least 3 continents going here, man. Anyway, so today, with that being said, I'm going to just share the movie that we've been trying to share that I did for Mark, and I appreciate Mark's birthday. And I appreciated him asking me to do it because otherwise I wouldn't get around to it. So are we ready, John? Down here in Clown Town, it's time to make a stand. With the Clueless family, and they're going to entertain us with some poetry.
I was born in a cuckoo clock on a cold rainy day in the heart of Brussels sprouts.
We have no other choice. In the country of handstands, our feet must root in the sky.
Are these like to draw a painting of yours?
Yeah, that's a drawing of a wolf, actually.
It's digital?
No, it's not, no.
Yeah, I'm growing up. Living on borrowed zero, you knock me out. 2 carousels passing in night's starry town, Saturn's ringtones tingling in my ribcage. As Darwin said, the beagle has landed. Getting to know you, honey flame. Our steps so hot, we leave embers behind, until beyond vanishing, we amplify the sun.
it became apparent that I was a prince of ash.
Between us, the world spins like a blue pendant in the jewel-strewn reaches of infinite obsidian.
We're in Greece. Zeus is having a good time.
Our love is infinite, but night is not. Cupid knows voodoo. Buddha does too.
But when I was in Boise, I looked for girls. When I was in Amsterdam, I looked for hamsters.
Lonely wandered on Horatio as the sun's cape flare dared like a matador's crimson satin, where vagrant airs lounge and twilight's aching glitter. The foot walks to destiny's boudoir. You resurrect the laughter strung out on the buzz-laden air.
Then again, I am in Khartoum. I'll write for you a fat pantoum.
Oh my. Oh, thank you so much, everybody. Well, that was a long time coming. I appreciate having this audience for it very much. So now the darling of New Zealand, I mean, Australia, sorry. Whoops.
Hang on, there's no sheep here.
Sorry. Cassandra Atherton is an award-winning prose poet and international expert on prose poetry. Her prose poetry is widely anthologized and has been translated into Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. Cassandra has published more than 30 books and is currently writing an illustrated book of prose poetry on the Hiroshima Maidens with funding from the Australia Council and the Victorian government. Cassandra co-wrote prose poetry, an introduction, and co-edited the anthology of Australian prose poetry. She's commissioning editor for Westerly magazine and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia. And Cassandra, are you still working on that book with Princeton, or is that done?
No, it's due September next year, so it's about 100,000 words. So yeah, I'm working on a book on ekphrastic poetry. So yeah, hit me up with your ekphrasis. But I have more of a poem on more of an absurd task that somehow Mark and John Wessex and I got asked to do, and it was to write a poem that contained mangosteen and clam's guts in it. So here is my prose poem on those two things. And I think throughout the show, you'll hear John's and Mark's as well. Once we shared a hot mangosteen pie at the Narita McDonald's, and when it burnt my tongue like thick toffee, you traced my frazzled taste buds with your index finger like they were braille. Years later at the Lennox Hotel, we order room service clam chowder at 2 a.m. There's no spoon, so you dip your tongue into the hot creamy liquid and withdraw it hastily. Your tongue is rough when you touch its tip to the roof of my mouth. As you slip your hands down my spine, I wonder if the bitter taste that lingers is from a red onion, a clam's gut sack, or the Truman Capote quote you wrote with a sticky finger on my upper thigh. I would like to introduce the incredible Mark Vincennes, an Anglo-Swiss American poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He has published over 40 books of poetry, translations, and fiction, including more recently The Pearl Diver of Irunmani, The King of Prussia is Drunk on Stars, and the Mayfly Codex. Forthcoming poetry collections are Spells for the Wicked with Unlikely Books, Ironclad with Spite and Dival, and No More Animal Poems with White Pine Press. Mark is also a prolific translator and has translated from the German, Romanian, and French. He has published 11 books of translations. Most recently, we know this one because we love it, An Audible Blue Selected Poems 1963 to 2016 by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist. You know his name, it's Klaus Merz. And it won the 2023 Massachusetts Book Prize for Translated Literature. His own work has been translated into many languages, including Japanese, Chinese, Russian, come up with the next ones, French, Italian, Spanish, Romanian, Greek, German, and Icelandic. He is currently working on a novel entitled The Age of Occasions. Vincent is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. It's our favorite bit, people. He has lived all over the world, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but he now lives on a farm in rural western Massachusetts overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, Melville's inspiration for Moby Dick, where there are still more long-jawed orb weavers, sow bug killer spiders, and double-toothed prominents than bipedal hominids. Mark, you're sure to have a treat for us today.
Well, I'll do my best. This is called Sometime in the 18th Dynasty. And it starts with a little quote from Howard Carter, the Egyptologist, archaeologist. After clearing 9 meters of the descending passage in about the middle of the afternoon, we came upon a second sealed doorway, which was almost the exact replica of the first. And here, the main body of the poem. In the zigzag of the monkey-puzzled tree, the twisted globes appear to touch the light on the hills, and the gilded thread of laundry lines glimmers amongst the gutters. We venture out into a whirlpool of waving hands. Somewhere buried beneath this chamber lies a woman once named Delilah. Somehow you still hear the solemn litany, feel the children's fingers tugging at shirt tails, or perhaps some other ancient crime like climbing sheer walls in broad daylight, or the Spanish tomatoes in the Egyptian greenhouse tricked into breathing. Walk up into the brightening pasture, the shepherds say. Cross the Milky Way on the backs of dragons, the shamans say. An old pharaoh once told me it was best to die aroused. When time finally comes around, you don't want to dilly-dally, he'd said. At that moment, I believed him, and in the sputter of the hieroglyphic rain, it seemed so bloody convincing. And the second poem, A Meeting on Waterways. It seems all the light of morning has descended here, where it's usually dark, and frogs raise their heads in the bulrushes, where the last sounds swarm among the oaks, weighing these few scraps, the things you've said you leapt gardens to procure. There are still more feathers on this side. Hard work, all that feather versus fodder. Tomorrow. What a difficult word. Interrupted and intercepted and tomorrow. All that we imagined. Careful. The universe has ears. And on that note, I am delighted to present our first feature for tonight, who is Oz Hardwick, beaming into us from the United Kingdom. Oz is a European poet, photographer, barely competent bass guitarist, and accidental academic, whose most recent full collection, Consensus of Preconceptions, came out from Sir Vision Books in 2022. Oz has been shortlisted for a number of international awards, but didn't win any. I know that very well. Although he feels pretty confident about upcoming over 60s egg and spoon race. His latest publication is the chapbook Retrofuturism for the Dispossessed from Hedgehog Poetry 2023. And Oz is also a professor of creative writing at Leeds Trinity University. Welcome, Oz.
Hello, it's an absolute delight to be at least partially here. I've had a busy day, and I'm dazed with official medications. I thought I'd read, in the spirit of being dazed, I thought I'd read something I wrote this morning to start off. It's called The New Broom. At the top of a tower of tottering chairs, I sit down with the new boss to discuss my future. I have, as instructed, brought a signed and dated photograph of myself and something that I love. The former is already an issue, as apparently the photo's not dated enough, and I should have been wearing a loose jacket with shoulder pads and the sleeves rolled up, or maybe flared trousers and a nylon shirt with wide lapels. The new boss looks disappointed, but gestures for me to follow him down the jumbled pile and out into the unrecognizable streets, which are paved in marble and knee-deep in surprisingly clear water, in which vicious fish, reminiscent of medieval apocalypse scenes, snap and thrash. We splash our way to a pavement cafe where I order us both coffee and chicory syrup with a dash of dried milk that won't dissolve. Then I look at the sky, which promises a storm, and I look at roads twisting into the distance and try to calculate how far it is to the nearest place I know. About the thing you love, says the new boss, in a voice weighted with lead and brimstone. I pull out a stool, and there it sits. Oh, dearie me, says the new boss, in a voice that is now a dull blade through bone. Oh, dearie me. That's one of mine from the workplace. I've been writing a lot of things about offices of late and the place where I work. And so I thought I'd read another one, which is again quite fresh. It's just come out today in International Times, which was a anarchist tinged alternative paper when I was but a lad. That was one of the things that warped my young mind, as the authorities thought it would do and feared it would do, and it did. And it now exists in this digital state, and I contribute quite regularly. And this has just come out, so it's another thing from the workplace. It's called A Legal Matter. When I arrived for the meeting, the manager was a horse, his mouth dropping hay and his eyes swimming with that emotion that equine artists always try to capture but never quite understand. His hooves were shod in iron. To his left was another horse taking notes on a battered laptop, stamping horse language with all the frenzy of anger or need. To his right was an armoured steed, straight out of a 30s epic, whose presence was never explained. Their backs were to a picture window displaying the wasteland, and their manes shimmered with sweat or something worse. The manager waved his leg, cannon, fetlock, pastern, gesturing me to sit, though there was no chair. And then he tipped his head, pole, forelock, commanding me to dance, though there was no music. The air swam with the sweet stink of warm shit. 6 unreadable eyes. Sooner or later, someone would have to draw conclusions. Amongst the things I've been doing today, I've been to a launch of a book with a beautiful cover. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah. Oh, yes. Apocalyptic Landscapes, edited by a chap called Steve Ely. And amongst other things, it contains, it's got the lovely subtitle, Poems from the Expressionist Poetry Workshop, which I kind of like. It's part of a project, I suppose, of him unearthing a trend of literary expressionism in 20th and 21st century British writing. And I've got a sequence in there of sort of 10 parts. And it was a great launch. It was really good fun to actually go out and meet the other writers who have longer sequences in it. It's got 5 long sequences and then a bunch of shorter poems by different writers in there. So I thought I'd read a couple of pieces from that, as again, it's sort of kind of fresh. And if there's one thing that I particularly enjoy, it's reading things I don't know very well yet. I was having a long conversation with someone the other day, and I so admire people that can do things from memory. But as soon as I start remembering things, I sort of lose interest and want to read something I'm more likely to stumble over. It's a strange thing that I do. So this is a couple of bits from a long piece called Coastal Erosion. Shopping trolleys line up like trains in a station where no one gets on or off. It's 9 a.m. and the morning's already slowing down. Its tills quiet and its carriages cooling. A fly buzzes a dim bulb, and if anyone cared enough to look, they'd see it was moving backwards. These anomalies are occurring more and more frequently these days. Shadows falling towards sunlight, rivers inching away from the sea, stars briefly slipping into retrograde motion. But barely anyone notices beyond internet voices dismissed as cranks. All of which is to explain why, having left the house to buy milk, cat food, rice and a few fresh vegetables, I'm instead the only passenger on a train bound for all those ghost stations that were lost like mythical kingdoms when I was but a child built from scuffs and love and irrational fears. I've a 10-shilling note for my fare in the breast pocket of my blue blazer. A fly lands in the seat opposite and unfolds a newspaper trumpeting peace on earth. The train stands still, but the scenery picks up speed. And as it was mentioned in the introduction, I'll just sort of finish off with something from Retrofuturism for the Dispossessed, which is a tiny little thing, which I like pleasingly small books as well. So I'll just read something from here. And I'll read the opening one. And it's called, with appropriate exclamations, Boys Build Your Own Time Machine, which of course has a little bit of a nod to Ray Bradbury, but more the sort of adverts in comics that initiated Bradbury's story. Boys, build your own time machine. Choose your wood carefully. The harder, the better. Oak may be the most obvious, but you may consider elm for its connotations of new beginnings, or even the beech to invoke the aid of the divine feminine. Don't just settle on the easiest option, and don't be ashamed if it asks you about your desires. Pay particular attention to scent. It is closer to an empty corridor that echoes with the sound of chairs scraping on floorboards and a voice as monotonous as a stopped clock. Or is it closer to the sting of brambles on your berry-stained hand? Then listen to its stories, noting fluctuations in angles of incidence and refraction and variations in volume and temperature. Count its rings and plot intersections with medullary rays. These figures will not be procedurally necessary, but may foster an illusion of stability and control, which has been found comforting in 86% of reported cases. Switch off all artificial light sources, not forgetting standby indicators and handheld devices. And as each is extinguished, call to mind gentle arms, a radio turned low, and the smell of a winter coat. Now build your time machine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oz. And so, thank you so much for that great reading. And Denise Duhamel, who unfortunately was not able to join us today because she is in Florida and there is another storm approaching and they have no power again. But I'm going to read a couple of poems by Denise and then we'll get on to David Centorbi. Denise is a distinguished university professor at the MFA program at Florida International University in Miami. Her poetry collections include Scold, Blowout, Kaching, 2 and 2, Queen for a Day, Selected and New Poems, The Star-Spangled Banner, and Kinky, and the recently released Pink Lady. Denise is a recipient of fellowships from the Guggenheim Foundation and the National Endowment for the Arts. And so here are 2 of Denise's. This is called Self-Portrait, in which I refuse to take responsibility for Emily Carr. That's not me voting because I'm sick of being lied to, me tossing the Coke Zero can out the car window. Let Coke clean up the planet. That's not me saying poetry. That's me not picking your socks or mothering you so you'll feel better about your temper. That's not me paying my taxes and not bringing my cloth tote to the store. That's me refuting to wear my seatbelt, my perpetual smile. That's me eating a pink steak, running up a credit card I'll never pay. That's me calling in sick, so sick of being lied to, I burned down a perfectly nice house. And the second one from Denise is a self-portrait in which I am not polite. I'm not wearing my lipstick. Hell, I haven't even brushed my teeth. My nails are unpolished, ragged, dangerous if you try to take my hand. I don't know how else to say it. I just don't care. There's sleep in my eyes, the gooey kind, dandruff on my scalp. I have given up on deodorant and soap. Say hello to your own peril. Sneer and I will whack you, possibly throw an old stiletto. So duck. I cut the line, honk my horn, chew with my mouth full, then burp. The piercings in my ears have closed. My heart has closed. And my clothes? I've stopped doing laundry. I've stopped the tedium of hand washing my delicates. I've given up on bras. They hurt. I've given up on doing dishes, smiling, shaving, or crossing my legs. I've given up on purses, bangles on my wrist, any expectations of femininity. No, you can't sit here. No, I don't have a minute. I've given up on the color pink and mirrors. I leave splats on the floor and dust on the shelf. I've never felt more like myself. And now we are delighted to hear from David Calogero Centorbi from Detroit, Michigan.
Mike, I got this. Let me do this one. Ready?
Okay, sure.
David Calogero Centorbi is from Detroit, Michigan. And I just wanted to ask David if he knew the artist Scott Hawking. Oh, you're muted, David. And also if you know Tyree Guyton, who was over there in Black Bottom section with this wonderful Gutenberg project.
Yeah, I've seen that. No, I have never met them personally, but I have seen that.
Matt Hawking, yeah, he's great too. So, Detroit, yay. In the 90s, David earned an MFA in creative writing from the Now. He's the author of Landscapes of You and Me from the inestimable Alien Buddha Press. And another title here, After Falling into Disarray from Daily Drunk Press. His chapbook entitled The Eloquence of Departure won James Tate Prize. Yay, Sir Vision and Tony there. His chapbook is entitled The Eloquence of Departure, and subsequently was published there as a Sir Vision. Let's hear it from David Calagero Centorbi. Take it, David.
All righty, thank you. I'd like to also say hello to Tony Kitt, and thank you for selecting my manuscript for the 2023 James Tate Prize. And I'll be reading out of that. And also, unfortunately, I don't know if you can see this, that's the cover, but I only show it to you because the artist is Ukrainian artist, Victoria, and I don't know, I can't pronounce her last name, maybe Tony can help. But she designed the cover, the front and the back, and she's been displaced because of the war, and I think she may have gone back. I've been in contact a little bit with her just through Facebook, just to see if things are okay, but it was a really nice cover. So I feel connected to her because of that. The first one is called Apologies Folded Up Along with a Broken Memory. Sometimes there was a song that pierced your tongue. Sometimes I became the forgery you said I was. So even the shards of wonder had meaning. A shattered bottle against a sweaty Bible, a salty sunset. The time I fell turned inside out with pleasure into your questions. And oh, there were prayers, such a slick confusion because your smile smelled like a late night shot. I tried to taste the flames. I tried to see your face unfiltered, to smell the blood of all those tapped hearts wet with anonymous desire. But there was always only the ceiling and its cracked, cold laughter. As I closed my eyes, as I tried to breathe, as I tried to call out your name. Next one is in 3 parts called Barbed Laughter. 1. Barbed laughter from a night of bitter parades. The holy left hanging, held in no palms, genuflections to thorned, spittled hearts. You heard the tears as they rolled down my cheek, jaundice and frantic. 2. In what nightmare will you sleep in next, turning children's eyes into cringing stones, their tongues into lonely red carpets? I asked you to pour your pleadings on the wind and scatter their rusty tears up to the sun, light of future cold and willless destruction. 3. You stood over the still pain on the altar, cries long lost, forgotten, curled fingers, and caressed the smiles of lies, stroked the silky manes of illusion. There was a fire there that had never breathed or eaten, its orange lips cracked, the valleys holding pails of dizzy, dying lovers. And you kept singing, until the end of time, blood, forgiveness, and laughter will be mine. Another one, I think a short one. I saw the sweaty scales. I saw the sweaty scales and their cracked notes sliding down to a now stillborn melody. A melody that once, when our legs and feet could breathe, we held one another and whispered stars and thunder into each other's ears, our passion melting the jealous mirrors until the sharp tears started spreading across the floor, pushing us toward shot glasses filled with bitter bloodlight, a drink we would soon raise to our once imagined endless horizons. And last one is a 3-part. The title, There is a Pale Aching. 1. Your blushes asked me once for lies, the asking withered off the tongue. Sometimes there were sirens, sometimes silence etching broken hearts on bedroom windows. 2. You saw grace in cracked bouquets, felt forgiveness on cold fingers. In the bedroom, candles drip assorted wax, your short, hard breaths, your silhouette crying to dizzy satin sheets. 3. I offered you the place you tried to forget, the confessions turned to blue stone, the sweet taste of moonlight cupped with unintentional supplication. But you just smiled and whispered, harm smells like freshly cut grass, its deep brown eyes teased like bourbon, and there are only so many prayers the frigid black sky can hold until it finally drowns you in its merciful rain. So that is from The Eloquence of Departure from Sir Vision books. And again, thank you for the invite to read, and for Tony and Sir Vision for publishing that work.
Thank you so much, David. Next, we will see a short movie by Jake Quatt and his partner Ches Cipriano. Jake is a multidisciplinary artist based in Minneapolis, currently working in illustration, printmaking, animation, and shadow puppetry. He received his BA in Fine Arts and Journalism from Beloit College in 2019 and moved to Minneapolis in early 2020. He currently illustrates for Mad Hat Press and Spite and Dibble, animates for the Science Museum of Minnesota, and puppeteers for the Heart of the Beast Theater. He's also currently collaborating with Mark Vincennes, me, on a graphic novel entitled Coalition Number 9. He can be found on Instagram at Jake Quatt Art. And the poetry in Jake's movie hails from his partner, Ches Cipriano, who is Filipino, queer, first-generation American artist based in Minneapolis. And they operate as a community cultivator, producer, organizer, radical joy seeker, and mixed media collaborator. And here we go. As long as I can make it work. Here we go.
The once brilliant but now dead flowers greet them with familiarity, basking in the shadow of what their beauty used to mean. One autumn evening they stroll as usual, pausing for a moment at a small pool, where they peer at themselves to see if they sense the differences. They see the same person, the confused composure of hopefulness still clinging to them. The moon seems, in the water, eerily close. That's the shadows spying again, they think. Everything in darkness is in some way their ghost. I am never alone, they think. Shifting the thought into a question, then death appears like an answer to a prayer. then the darkness bore them away. They also remember, less clearly, the chilling insight that from this moment, the shadows would never let go of them again. No one listens anymore to the radio static and the calamity of man, but the shadows remember. They signaled it, right here, with the spirits brimming, watching. They remember. Moonlight cascading and welcoming them with open arms. All the different nouns, they say them in rotation. Death, thought, shadow, stranger. Everything sounds so simple, so conventional. I must have been, they think, simple. The one who disappears from the pool will never return. A soul will return, searching for the silhouettes of who they were.
Wow, how beautiful, huh? That was great. Congratulations, Jake.
Pretty cool, right?
All right. So now moving on here, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Tony Kitt. Here's one of his latest books, The Magic Flute, spelled P-H-L-U-T-E, the noble editor of Sir Vision. He is a writer, translator, and professor who lives in Hyde Park. Oh, sorry, started reading the wrong one. He lives in Dublin, Ireland, and in Calabria, Italy. He has a background in biology, Celtic studies, and classical music, and has worked as a researcher, a journalist, a music critic, and a creative writing tutor. His poetry collection, entitled Endurable Infinity, has been published by the University of Pittsburgh Press in the Pitt series in 2022. His poetry chapbook, entitled The Magic Flute, has been brought out by Sir Vision Books from Dublin in 2019. Tony edited the contemporary tangential, I always say that word wrong. Well, I almost did it. Contemporary tangential surrealist poetry anthology, also from Sir Vision Books, and the anthology entitled Invasion, Ukrainian Poems About the War. And Tony was the winner of the Maria Edgeworth Poetry Prize, and he's helped put this show together today a little bit. Please welcome Tony Kitt.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Good evening, everybody. It's good to be here alongside some terrific poets and some of the Sir Vision poets. It's good to see Oz Hardwick and David Calogero Centorbi. As for me, I'll just read three not very long poems. One from my last collection, Endurable Infinity, and two new ones. I've got into writing kind of surrealist parables, and they will be a part of my new collection if it ever gets published. So I'll start with one of them. It got published in the New Ulster magazine. It's called Walking with a Voice. There was a man who wandered outside his blueprint. He approached the custodians of open spaces with television eyes and fig leaf bodies. They said, every person is a projection. Books travel from mind to mind. Show us your trust transplant. There was another man who went into the newspaper rain and listened hard. Nothing but splinters of a xylophone. He slept under the whiskey-colored sky. He ended up around the corner of the phone signal. A life later, a sprout answered the call. There was a woman with a black and white face, posing among blots of color. She tried to tell time on a handless clock. She bought a leftover ticket to travel in the right direction. At the crush hour, she boarded a train bound for nowhere to be found. When you walk with a voice, you hear stories. Right, that's one of them. The next poem is called Close Formation. It's from my collection Endurable Infinity, Pittsburgh University Press. Close Formation. A hunter trails a long-tailed consequence. It is the sixth nightmare. Children watch eggplants grow meanings. Exuberance exists at the exit. How would you talk to a mind arrow? What would you give for a bulletproof poem? Seasonal doing is the profession one should avoid. I'm doing my best, and you're doing yours. Our genes are our engines. To survive, we'll have to Draculize our story. For how? Ask your napalm, your landmines. Nobody would CNN us to safety. A long-lasting consequence haunts the hunter. Security by murky reality. It is the seventh nightmare. Meaning plants grow eggs. All right, and the final poem is called Spare Parts. Yet another surrealistic nightmare. A man goes to the post office to consign his flattened heart to a voice in the receiver. There is a queue inside. Blood is dripping from manila envelopes. An open drawer container stands ready for mutuality. The man listens to a mirror. The man lip reads his imperfection. You're a quadrangle among circles. You no longer exist in your 360-degree entirety. It's my turn now. Which part of me should I send? And to whom? The postman whispers in my ear, "You're a writer. Help me. Writer me." Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Hey, hey, writer man.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now we hear from Robert Archambeau, who has written books of poetry, literary criticism, and essays. His most recent book, Alice B. Toklas is Missing, is a novel. The sequel, The Bloomsbury Forgery, will appear in 2026. A translation of Gabriel and Marcel Picaret's surrealist text Beyond Gestures that he undertook with Jean-Luc Garneau will appear from Mad Hat Press this fall, very soon. He helps edit the Fortnightly Review, and when he is not on sabbatical, he is, God help him, chair of the English department at Lake Forest College. Welcome, Robert.
Hey, great to be here. I wore my bowler hat in honor of Rene Magritte in his capacity as surrealist. He's not really a theater of the absurd guy, but they're cousins, absurdism and surrealism, the way Leah Graham and I are cousins, Leah who will be reading later today. And I'm concerned with surrealism lately because of the book Mark mentioned, that he was good enough to publish and Cassandra was good enough to blurb, and that I may be good enough to display for you here. Check that out. It's as if I knew what I was doing. Anyway, this book It's called Beyond Gestures. In French, it's Au-delà des gestes, and it's by Gabriel and Marcel Piqueret, who were twins, which is a good thing for surrealists to be, mid-century Belgian surrealist prose poet twins, possibly the world's most prominent Belgian surrealist mid-century prose poet twins. And to meet the global demand for this kind of writing, I and my dear friend, the linguist Jean-Luc Garneau, translated a selection of their work. This is what it is going to be. It's what it's going to look like. It'll be coming out this fall, and I will read to you 4 prose poems, plus what I think has probably got to be the unlikeliest poem ever to appear in Poetry magazine that was published there. And you can hear the then editors, Chris Wyman and Don Scher, trying to read it together in a podcast and not quite making it. Anyway, 4 prose poems and then that. And the first prose poem is called Riding at Night. Goes like this. Perfection, cry the horsemen. The mountaintops shine in the moonlight. It's a matter of getting there, and it's also a matter of conquest. It is also a matter of sand, of pebbles, of thistles all around. There will be time for analysis later. For this moment, only one thing matters: speed in every rider, from one dust cloud to the next. In the breast of each high-spirited steed, everywhere one urge: speed. Under the sparkling sky, under the purple mesas, hard against the rolling prairie, speed. Faster, always faster, out to the very limits of strength, speed. These horsemen in their monks' cassocks. And this next one, the Piqueret twins wrote a lot of stuff that sounds a little bit like Kafka, and this is one of them. It's called Professionals. Having scaled the wall, they leapt over the bristling shards of broken glass, hoping to land softly in the slop pile left over from last year's meager scrapings. As they fell endlessly, they came to the conclusion that they must have picked the wrong wall. Growing used to the void, they started to think of other things. I think I should have dedicated that to anyone who's chaired an academic English department. That is exactly what it's like. All right, another one for you. It's called Sideshows of the Sky. I want to dedicate this one to my cousin Leah Graham, because this is about pupils being bad, and we pass notes at the back of academic presentations and poetry readings. The teacher's glare bore down into the very whites of his pupils' eyes. The students, transfixed, struggled to lower their heads. Then the teacher turned around. Then the teacher dozed off. The pupils raised their heads, quickly patting snowballs into shape. But if by some chance the teacher should happen to turn a suspicious eye towards them, they'll quickly change their snowballs into pen nibs, which they'll nimbly sink into the inkwells there in front of them, put there long ago for just this purpose. And last of the prose poems from this book that I'll read to you is called A Day in the Life of Messange, which is a woman's name in French. I'm going to eat sand, announced Messange. Then she started working the sewing machine. The machine itself sat high on a table with propped up legs. To reach the pedal, Messange had to strain, lifting her leg uncomfortably high. Soon this wore her out, and she lifted first her left leg, then her right, in a tremendous effort, completely disproportionate to the end result. Things did not go well. The machine worked erratically, grinding terribly, and constantly threatening to flip over and crash to the kitchen floor. Messange kept at it though, pushing the pedal harder and harder, sweating to make the wheel go just a little bit faster. in the end, noticing that the object pierced by the needle was no mere handkerchief, but the smooth, shiny body of a fish, she gave it up, letting her tired legs rest. Her father, seeing her sighing and easing her right leg down gingerly, said, "Come on, Miss Solange, cheer up. Sure, today may not have been a big success, but so what? Don't let it get you down. Tomorrow's another day. You're a resourceful girl. Where's your confidence? Think of the future." Consoled, Miss Solange went and kissed her dolls, sat at the table, and played at cooking sand. And we will close on this one. Again, I just think it's weird that very few things I've written have ended up in Poetry Magazine. And this one did. This is a weird thing. It's not normal. A pedal pusher said to me, "A pedal pusher said to me, no Breakheiser, no Sturfput a stemping and a stomping Cretan-wise could drive a man to madness, just as no thousand Orphas all draped in damp peignoirs, doing their great cochera with the prima donna of Ikesdamoda, of Poxivest, of Ananuk, each Orpha in an evening gown imploring of our pedal pusher to go a step and go a stomp all over yet again with 1,000 mops and 1,000 Sturfputs imploring them, the Breakheiser in me, the Sturfput in me, the mop in me, the Cochera in me, the Poxavost in me, the Ananek in me, the Equesdagmona in me, and all the stompers, the steppers, the mops, the evening gowns, and all the Orphas and the pedal pushers, the damp peignoirs, the Cretans, the prima donnas who beg the Cocheras, the Equesdamodas, the Ananeks, and all the packs of us to step and a stomp for the sake of love, the great flowering love of 1,000 pedal pushers draped in damp peignoirs will lead no Breakheiser, no Sturfput, no mop, no Kuchera, no Poxavast, no Ananek, no Equesdamogda to implore a man to madness. And that is what a stepping and a stomping Cretan-wise, a pedal pusher said to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the pedal pushers. And I think next, my friend James is gonna read the book, the bio, right?
Leah's Bible. Leah Graham. Leah Graham here happens to be Robert Archambeau's cousin, in case you didn't catch that, and that's a thrill, huh? So she's a writer, translator, and professor who lives in Hyde Park, New York. She's the author. Did you mean me, Mark, or did you have somebody else in mind? You said James.
I was thinking of James T. Kirk.
Oh, is he here?
Yeah, William Shatner has been here for several hours.
Okay.
Leonard Nimoy's here too.
Oh my God. And so is Robert Archambeau's cousin.
That's right.
Well, she's the author of 3 poetry collections from the Hotel Vernon from Salmon Press 2019, and Huff and Helix, and Where and Here, and You from No Tell Books in 2011, and forthcoming from Mad Hat Press, the OED Odes. Now, how clever is that anagram there? Leah's edited collections include From the Word to the Place, essays on the work of Michael Anania, Mad Hat, and with Celia Bland, A Jar of Air, the work of Maxine Chernoff, also from Mad Hat 2026. Leah's chapbooks include Spell to Spell from Above Ground Press, This End of the World, Notes to Robert Crutch, Apartment 9 Press, Calendar Girls, again from Above Ground, and the forthcoming The Swing at the Edge of the World, Finishing Line 2025. And Leah is an associate professor of English at Marist College. Let's hear it for the cuz.
All right, can you all hear me? It's good. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you for that. All right, yes. I'm Robert Archambeau's cousin. What else needs to be said? All right. Anyway, I'm going to read from the OED Odes that's coming out through Mad Hat. And so the trick here, or the thing that you need to know, is that every title is a word with a definition as its title. So there you go. All right. And so the first one that I'm going to read is called Spell. A set of words, a formula or verse supposed to possess magical powers, a charm or incantation, a period or a space of time of indefinite length. So I'll just tell you all that this poem comes out of hearing an NPR report years ago on my way to work, where I heard that Salman Rushdie and Donald Trump sat next to each other at a Crosby, Stills, and Nash concert. I was like, I was so, yeah, I was really taken by this. All right, so Spell. Tonight, they're just Sal and Dawn with their kids at the garden. No memory of being in hiding anything. They sing along. Who knew Sal could harmonize with Nash, or that Dawn knows every word to Woodstock? Side by side, these two guys, children of God, here to lose the smog. A moment in stardust, this brief golden thrall. I'll read the second one is a word in Spanish, the word delitas, which means crimes. But, you know, when you see it on, you know, when you see it written, it looks like delights, you know, which is kind of what happened to me. So I was in Buenos Aires with my husband back in 2018, and I took him to the Escuela Superior Mecánica de la Armada, which had been a school, right, for the military, but then became basically a place where they disappeared people. So my husband, I told him, but he didn't quite, I don't think he really wanted to hear that, so he didn't quite remember that I told him that this is where we were going. So that's part of the thing. But the absurdity of this has to do with language, what things look like and what they are, you know? All right, so deletus. 1. Hard to resist the word's resemblance to delights, but knowing it can't be. I look it up after reading it over and over on plaques stationed here and there in this naval base turned detention center. Bare except for the faces stenciled across walls, blurbs about terror, death flights, bodies washing up in the Rio de la Plata. In the one building we enter, portraits of the Plaza del Mayo mothers order the hallway. Birth dates embroidered into their white scarves. They present children's photos in a mute show and tell. We emerge to sky's canopy, a hint of rain, gaze up at monk parakeets and hoop pines, their nests cylindrical baskets like something we might buy in a tourist market. You tell me you didn't know I was taking you here after the art museum. Didn't know after lunch of pulpo and salad. I say, I told you. You don't listen. And we almost fight, but then go outside the gates to sit on a curb and cry. 2. Your father, grandparents, your Uncle Paul, baby, forever at the window in Vienna, watching them parade into 1938. What was called Anschluss, adjoining, or Blumenkrieg, the War of the Flowers. Later in Seattle, your grandmother naming her parakeet Franz Joseph, because, she said, he was always so good to us. 3. Headed for San Telmo, searching out tango, our cab driver drums the wheel and sings to 80s hits. Ring my bell, and how will I know? Super freak, and where the streets have no name. We pass statue after statue of men on horses, men dressed for war. Figures look one way, words another. You practice reading in Spanish, joke about names of restaurants, Kentucky pizza, and Louisiana fried chicken. Next to the Center for the Deported. What irony, you tell me. I say no. El Centro del Deportivos is just a sports arena. The final one that I'll read, also part of the odes, pardon me, is the absurdity of travel. How one thing. So I'm from Arkansas, and I ended up going to high school in Joplin, Missouri, of all places, the worst place I've ever lived, which is saying something. So this poem is called Escapeful, giving a chance of escape. Makes me think baleful, grateful, pitiful. That window in Joplin, Missouri at 17, a wishful transom that led to the roof behind the honey locust, where I went, dreamt away, as if it were its own country of not here, where I was then, in that age of me. Grazing desire to light out from that grayed-in mining town, the city that Jack built, Jack being zinc and sinkholes dotting 35.6 square miles from Rangeline Road to Souls Harbor to Crystal Caves, filled in for a parking lot, where Bonnie and Clyde holed up in the 30s, played rummy, chain-smoked camels, robbed, killed, fled, left behind a film-filled camera, the globe developed. Bonnie's Mary Jane poised on fender, Clyde holding her in a bride over a threshold pose, or that shot with arm akimbo, and pistol, hip cocked and cigar at lip. While skirting the edges of Bienville Parish, their ambush turned circus-like, the coroner said. Throngs gathering to cut the bloody locks from Bonnie's head, Clyde's trigger finger and ear, gather shell casings and shattered glass from the Ford V8 sold as souvenirs. Something I thought about in passing that Sunday we strolled through Porridge, after mussels and schnitzel, past that 4th century church, its marble from the Sea of Marmara, an old Christian hideout, its bell tower lookout into a western blue. There were candles to light, gelato to try, baseball jerseys for sale, hanging from rafters in the shops. Bonnie number 1, Clyde number 2. Thanks so much.
All right, Leah, that was great. Wow. I knew you weren't totally from New Hyde when I heard you start to speak. That was excellent. Thank you so much. All right. Now we're going to hear from, see if you can guess who I'm going to talk about now. The Wild Man of Washington. That's right, Richard Peabody. Richard spent the majority of his life in DC down there in the DMV. He wears many literary hats: poet, author, literary editor, publisher, teacher, mentor, the author of a novella and 3 short story collections. He taught graduate fiction writing at Johns Hopkins University for 15 years. His legendary Gargoyle magazine, Paycock Press, were founded in 1976. Yes. His most recent poetry volume, Guinness on the Quay, spelled Q-U-A-Y, was published in Ireland. They probably say it different over there, but differently. Salmon Poetry, 2019. The Richard Peabody Reader, a career-encompassing collection, was released in 2015 by Allen Squire Publishing as the first book in the ASP Legacy series. And I'm happy to have my own copy right here of his signal work here, Last of the Red Hot Magnetos, full of hot mantras. Please welcome Mr. Richard Peabody.
Okay. I'm sorry that earlier I had to leave and go feed the dog. That kind of took me by surprise. My wife wasn't back from swimming yet, so that happened. I'm just going to read like 2 flashes and a poem. This is called The Horizon Bleeds and Sucks Its Thumb. It's been a movie. It's This Mortal Coil album title, and it's from a poem by Anne Sexton, that title. The horizon bleeds and sucks its thumb. A flare arcs across the sky to spotlight barbed wire and muddy trenches. A pause, a moment of clenched breath to consider this expanding light. Another wave of Italian suits surge over the top of the trenches. You expect soldiers, but get plutocrats charging into the starburst, swinging their slinky electronic devices. Dress shoes sink into black muck, ties scorched by shrapnel. Machine gun fire ricochets one captain of industry onto a landmine. He is thrust skyward, valise blown open, paper money fluttering like pornography in acrid smoke around the perfectly grim halo his head makes in the dying light. This is March of the Leaf Blowers. They don't use machines. Just get down on their knees and blow. And this is longer. It's called Mr. Magnetism. Mr. Magnetism lives in the forest gaps where power lines run taller than trees. He soars down these green expanses until he reaches a power station and gets juiced up again so he can squeeze out sparks, a party trick crowd pleaser. His earliest beginnings were kids' birthday parties until he melted a cake with the snap of a finger. Mr. Magnetism attracts metal, of course. At the car dealership, the vehicles creep together. So slowly you shake your head, close your eyes, and wonder if you're imagining things as they cluster tightly together in colorful, concentric circles around him. One can almost hear the cars say, "Father, you're home." A quick blink and subtle twist of the wrist, and he motions every car back into parked formation. It's a gift. Come on down to Manny's Oldsmobiles and meet Mr. Magnetism himself. Construction sites, airports, train yards, the docks, hell, even Lowe's or Home Depot are perfect opportunities for Mr. Magnetism to show people what he can do. Some nights he dreams of bigger fish. Think rockets, missiles, UFOs. Why waste his time entertaining when he could lift bridges or ships into the air? Drag oil rigs to the bottom of the sea, create with iron, nickel, cobalt, and steel. Take that, Klaus Oldenburg. Take that, Alexander Calder and Lieberman. Take that, Richard Serra. Take that, Jeff Koons. Take that, Anish Kapoor, Gary Greff, Ken Kelleher. Want a giant ball of metal shaped into a B horror movie prop as large as your house? Need a wavy fantasy of metal that screams Burning Man to adorn the lawn of your capitalist empire headquarters? Easy. Crave a part shelter, part avant-garde silver wet dream pod on your campus? Done. Relish a stainless steel Rubik's Cube of rods and cones?
Excuse me, Richard, I muted you inadvertently. Please unmute. Sorry.
The whole thing?
No,
Wow.
no, just a few seconds.
Okay. Art became so simple and boring that it didn't excite Mr. Magnetism any longer. He gave his money away to worldwide charities, disappeared for a few decades, age diminished his powers. Still, he surfaced from time to time to make the news, slamming refrigerators and microwave ovens through the glass and brick of Chicago apartment buildings, to entrap drug dealers, stopping a high-speed getaway with every motorcycle and electric bike in Brooklyn, filling a runaway yacht with anchors, causing it to sink to the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. Costly mistakes involving numerous lawsuits. At wit's end, he sat on the banks of the Potomac River wishing he'd never had such a gift, and forming a yoga pose with raised hands, encircled his fingers and began to draw every nail from every house, shed, and building, calling them to him like you might call a puppy. Come flathead spikes, come galvanized fasteners, come box nails, common nails, deck nails, come drywall nails, come roofing nails, come brad nails, finishing nails, scaffold nails, come sinker nails, come underlayment nails, come masonry nails, joist hanger nails, duplex nails, come cap nails, come trim nails, come pole barn nails, connector nails, sliding nails, come nails for nailers and nail guns, and come they did. A murmuration of nails, sailing in thick clouds of gray and silver and black, as though every nail ever made circled directly over his curly hair. And then, with a smile he hadn't known in ages, Mr. Magnetism lowered his arms and bade them fall. Thank you.
He bade them fall.
That was amazing, huh? Mr. Magnetism himself there. Hey, what kind of nailing? Did you talk about the kind of nailing you were doing last night? Wah, wah, wah. Sorry about that. Thank you, Richard Peabody.
Thank you, Richard.
All right, moving on. Just full of legends today.
So next we hear from Andrew Joron, who is a poet, essayist, speculative fiction writer. Andrew's poetry collections include the Absolute Letter and the Trance Archive, selected poems. His work of speculative fiction, O0, was published by Black Square Editions in 2022. The Cryad Zero, a selection of his prose poems and critical essays, was published by Counterpath Press in 2007. And from the German, he has translated the literary essays of Marxist utopian philosopher Ernst Bloch from Stanford University Press, and The Perpetual Motion Machine by the proto-Dada fantasist Paul Scheerbart from Wakefield Press. As a musician, Andrew plays the theremin in various experimental and free jazz ensembles, including one with Clark Coolidge, I believe. And Andrew teaches creative writing at San Francisco State University. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, Mark. Thanks to be here. Just thinking, since we're doing absurdism today, that absurdism is curiously ageless or timeless. It always seems to be timely or relevant. We see it cropping up even in the 2nd century AD with the early Christian theologian Tertullian saying that God is absurd, or I believe in God because it's absurd. It's absurd to believe in God, and he wasn't martyred for that. So everyone must have been feeling that back in the 2nd century. But I'm going to reach back into the more recent past and read a couple of classic examples of absurdism. And I'm glad that many of you have pointed out the neighborliness of surrealism and absurdism. I'm going to read a text by Alfred Jarry, from the inventor of pataphysics. This is from his Exploits and Opinions of Dr. Faustroll, Pataphysician. Dr. Faustroll was 63 years old when he was born in Circassia in 1898. The 20th century was -2 years old. At this age, which he retained all his life, Dr. Faustroll was a man of medium height, or to be absolutely accurate, of 8 by 10 to the 10th plus 10 to the 9th plus 4 times 10 to the 8th plus 5 times 10 to the 6th atomic diameters. With a golden yellow skin, his face clean-shaven, apart from a few sea-green mustachios, as worn by King Saleh, the hairs of his head alternately platinum blonde and jet black, an auburn ambiguity changing according to the sun's position. His eyes, 2 capsules of ordinary writing ink flecked with golden spermatozoa like Danzig's schnapps. He was beardless, apart from his mustachios, through the judicious use of baldness microbes, which permeated his skin from the groin to the eyelashes and ate away all the follicles, without any need for Faustroll to fear that his scalp hair or eyebrows might fall out, since these microbes attack only fresh young hairs. From his groin down to his feet, in contrast, he was sheathed in a satiric black fur, for he was man to an improper degree. That morning, he took his daily sponge bath of two-tone wallpaper painted by Maurice Denis, with a design of trains climbing up spirals. A long time ago, he had given up water in favor of wallpaper, seasonable, fashionable, or according to his whim. So as not to embarrass the populace, he drew on over this design a shirt made of quartz fiber, baggy trousers of dull black velvet drawn tight at the ankles, tiny little gray boots with even layers of dust carefully preserved on them at great expense for many months past, broken only by the dry geysers of antlions, a golden yellow silk waistcoat exactly the same color as his skin, with no more buttons than an undervest, and 2 rubies as buttons for the breast pockets, very high up, and a greatcoat lined with blue fox fur. On his right index finger, he piled emerald and topaz rings right up to the fingernail, the only one of the 10 which he did not bite, and the line of rings was kept in place by a specially designed linchpin made of molybdenum, screwed into the bone of the ungual phalanx through the fingernail. By way of a tie, he passed around his neck the ceremonial ribbon of the great strumpot, an order invented by himself and patented to avoid any vulgarization. He hanged himself by this ribbon on a specially constructed gibbet, procrastinating for a few quarter hours between the choice of the 2 asphyxiating makeups called White Hanged Man and Blue Hanged Man. And after cutting himself down, he put on a solar toupee. Okay, Dr. Faustroll. So one other text I'd like to read from mid-20th century now by the great American poet Bob Kaufman. I'm sure you all know this, but it's always worthwhile to hear it again. It's the Abominist Manifesto by Bob Kaufman, and it's a classic work of absurdism. Abomunists join nothing but their hands or legs, or other same. Abomunists spit anti-poetry for poetic reasons. Abomunists do not look at pictures painted by presidents and unemployed prime ministers. In times of national peril, abomunists, as reality Americans, stand ready to drink themselves to death for their country. Abomunists do not feel pain, no matter how much it hurts. Abomunists do not use the word square except when talking to squares. Abomunists read newspapers only to ascertain their abominability. Abomunists never carry more than $50 in debts on them. Abomunists believe that the solution of problems of religious bigotry is to have a Catholic candidate for president and Protestant candidate for pope. Abomunists do not write for money, they write the money itself. Abomunists believe only what they dream, only after it comes true. Abominist children must be reared abominably. Abominist poets, confident that the new literary form, footprintism, has freed the artist of outmoded restrictions such as the ability to read and write or the desire to communicate, must be prepared to read their work at dental colleges, embalming schools, homes for unwed mothers, homes for wed mothers, insane asylums, USO canteens, kindergartens, and county jails. Abomunists never compromise their rejectionary philosophy. Abomunists reject everything except snowmen. All right, Bob Kaufman. So thank you all for listening.
Andrew, that was so great, man. I heard Garrett Caples the other night when we were talking about how cool you are. And there's a poem for you in his book. It's too great. All right, Andrew Joron. And I hear, Mark, what's next there?
Thanks, Andrew. So we're supposed to be seeing Jabberwocky from the frivolous family. Are they here? That's the question.
Hello.
Yeah.
You guys are here.
Actually, I think we're starting with a poem by Pablo Neruda.
Right, go for it.
Sucede que me canso de ser hombre. Sucede que entro en las sastrerías y en los cines, marchito, impenetrable, como un cisne de fieltro navegando en un agua de origen y ceniza. El olor de las peluquerías me hace llorar a gritos. Solo quiero un descanso de piedras o de lana. Solo quiero no ver establecimientos ni jardines, ni mercaderías, ni anteojos, ni ascensores. Sucede que me canso de mis pies y mis uñas, y mi pelo y mi sombra. Sucede que me canso de ser hombre. Sin embargo, sería delicioso asustar a un notario con un lirio cortado, o dar muerte a una monja con un golpe de oreja. Sería bello ir por las calles con un cuchillo verde, dando gritos hasta de frío. No quiero seguir siendo raíz en las tinieblas, vacilante, extendido, tiritando de sueño, hacia abajo en las tripas moradas de la tierra, absorbiendo y pensando, comiendo cada día. No quiero para mí tantas desgracias. No quiero continuar de raíz y de tumba, de subterráneo solo, de bodega con muertos, aterido, muriéndome de pena. Por eso el día lunes arde como el petróleo, cuando me ve llegar con mi cara de cárcel, y aúlla en su transcurso como una rueda herida y da pasos de sangre caliente hacia la noche. Y me empuja a ciertos rincones, a ciertas casas húmedas, a hospitales donde los huesos salen por la ventana, a ciertas zapaterías con olor a vinagre, a calles espantosas como grietas. Hay pájaros de color de azufre y horribles intestinos colgando de las puertas de la casa que odio. Hay dentaduras olvidadas en una cafetera. Hay espejos que deberían haber llorado de vergüenza y espanto. Hay paraguas en todas partes y venenos y ombligos. Yo paseo con calma, con ojos con zapatos, con furia, con olvido. Paso, cruzo oficinas y tiendas de ortopedia y patios donde hay ropas colgadas en alambre, calzoncillos, toallas y camisas que lloran lentas lágrimas sucias.
Fantastic. Wow. And do we have Jabberwocky as well? Are we doing Jabberwocky?
Was thrilling, and the slithy toes, the gyre and gimble in the wave. Out Rimsey were the borogoves and the mome rats outbreaks. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the jump bird, and shun the frumious bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the manxome foe he sought. So rested he by the tum-tum tree, and stood a while in thought. And as in uppish thought he stood, the Jabberwock, with eyes of flame, came whistling through the tuggy wood and burbled as it came. 1, 2, and through. The vorpal blade went snicker-snap. He must have said, and with its foot he went lumping back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to arms, my dearest boy. Oh, frabjous day. Halloo, halloo, he chortled in his joy. So thrilling, and the slimy toes did gyre and gimble in the wave. All busy were the borogoves and the mome rats outbrave.
Fantastic. So you guys have to be on regulars on the show, really, for sure. Thanks so much, guys. Next, we hear from Michael Gushue, who is co-founder of Poetry Mutual Press. His books are Pachinko Mouth, Conrad, Gathering Down Women, Sympathy for the Monster, in collaboration with C.L. Bledsoe, I Never Promised You a Sea Monkey, and the Judy poems, and forthcoming in collaboration with Kim Roberts, Q&A for the End of the World. He lives in the Brooklyn neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Thank you so much, Michael, for joining us. You here, Michael?
All right, here I am. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Very good. First, just a quick shout out to the Dada painters and poets, Robert Motherwell next to you. on your desk. Great book. Okay, so Hoover, do you like the way I vacuum? I learned it on patrol in an unnamed Mideast country. You'd be gobsmacked at how hard it is to vacuum up an entire Mideast country. The logistics alone are a turtle's nightmare. We lost a lot of good soldiers in that campaign, although we didn't actually lose them. They mostly wandered away to bistros and ice cream parlors and took jobs as servers and scoopers. Also, it wasn't really a Mideast country. It was New Jersey. I was just some kid with a vacuum cleaner and a dream, stars in my eyes, but only G2V class stars because I couldn't afford a vacuum cleaner on my pay as a busboy at a chain restaurant. I had to use a dustpan and a cooperative squirrel I befriended when I was living on a park bench. We would share acorns and work together to mug the small dogs people would leave unattended while they had sex in the bushes. It all went sour when I got a job as Mr. Peanut in front of the Planter's Peanut store on the boardwalk in Atlantic City. The squirrel tried to bury me for the winter. I'm done with squirrels, I said to myself. But the emptiness inside me could not be filled. I was a hollow canister, a shell always hungry, always whirling, nothing but dust bunnies inside. That's why I like vacuuming so much. I'm not the loneliest machine in the world. I saw you. Nothing burns alone. Let each face be a flame of itself. Let skin be amber and silk. Let a bridge join the air from you to me like breaths return. I'll wait for you, the arch of your foot, the way your lips are dark honey that burns the throat. I saw you, a red jacket, or leaving. When I glance up, the exact color of your eyes is indelible, but impossible to say. Only once have I come close, under a sky swept completely clean. Looking up, I saw not blue, but shadows of swallows careening into the night. This is from that forthcoming book, Q&A for the End of the World. It's I showed a bunch of poems to Kim Roberts, who had never seen a science fiction movie from the 50s. We watched them together and we each wrote poems. I have all the answers for the movie The Blob. What's up with the blob? It pops down from space, a glob of red goo, and slips up a stick to glue itself to an old man's hand. From then on, it bubbles and blebs the way through the populace, slurps gobbets of guys into the maw without pause, and unstoppable glop, malevolent gel. Steve McQueen hot rods around, sincere as seersucker. Though there are gobs of clues, the police are foggy clods. It will conquer the globe before a light bulb goes on for them. The blob balloons bigger, blood-bloated, oozing under the doors, out of grates, slithering a supermarket, mauling a movie theater, swallowing a diner whole. Finally, they freeze it like a popsicle bauble. Steve McQueen's a hero. Phoenixville, Pennsylvania is saved. But if this scarefest had been made in England, the monster would be more regal. We'd run screaming from the treacle. And finally, a quick poem for Autumn. Autumn's fire, hard frost. A ginkgo's leaves flare golden as they fall from her bright body. Abscission is a gilt frock pulled about her feet. The afterlife writes its red calligraphy on my bones. The afterlife, it is not elsewhere. My own life has been inside it, shored by its braces. With heavy rains, a river abandons its banks, becomes a The dead know one thing and one thing only. It is better to be alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So, as some of you know, we had this little challenge to write this poem called Clam, Guts, and Wessick and I, and Jeffrey Wright, although he hasn't submitted anything. Anyway, this one is called Clam, Guts, and the Mango Ghost. Lemonade, Nick Cave. That's what Frederica said while shaking her martini. Frederica's eyes went sparklier the more she shook, and that Little Mo showed up with her purple hair. Star-starved, she surveyed the restaurant atmospheres, spied her favorite talk show host high on the outer atmosphere. Purple black hole. Who needs Christmas ornaments? Someone at the party said. And so now we move on to the we have to hear from our co-host John Wessick, who is the regional editor of San Diego Poetry Annual, and he's published hundreds of poems and stories, Pyrenees, Fountain, Slipstream, Space and Time. And his most recent books are The Shaman in the Library and The Prague Deception. Welcome, John.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Well, here is my poem, Clam, Guts, and Mangosteen, and I made it a prose poem for Cassandra. Chainsaw fish ply the muddy Irrawaddy, past pink dolphins and drug lords' hippos, to spawn upstream and die. Deep among the mangosteen trees, the Piso brothers, Mojado and Seco, toss clam guts into a campfire. Flesh splits and sizzles in this furnace of disappointment. The brothers guzzle their gin tonic free now that Anopheles mosquitoes bat their heads against Primus lanterns, oblivious to the cloying sense of kerosene, smoke, and ammonia compounds. Must every poem be its own exorcism? Buzzed on incense and Latin, lizard brains diagram prison sentences and hang philosophers on a frame of space and time, while Aristotelian logic folds furlongs and fortnights over stretcher bars before stapling and sealing with gesso. Meanwhile, the mad scientist plots his escape from Plato's cave. He will either signal aliens from planet Remoulade with the clock radio, or reanimate a woolly mammoth using DNA from freeze-dried souvlaki. Somewhere in the constellation Sagittarius, Saturn forgot her shopping list. Pterodactyl burgers, spinach tartare, and Titan's beloved methane-chipped cookies left behind, like a geosynchronous satellite, painting an ocean of webbed toes with floor wax. When asked why she searches under Epsilon Sagittari, Saturn replies, "That's where the light is." A food chain is only as strong as its weakest link.
Thanks, John. Cassandra?
Well, it's been such a huge show that we're just going to end with our two special people, the Bob and Cindy show. So I will hand over straight away to my Brooklyn sis, badass poet, Cindy Hockman.
Hey, I'm glad you did call on me because today is the highest holiday of the year for a Jew. It is Yom Kippur. I should be in temple. Instead, I am at Balm. But Jeff Wright put a puppet in the pew of the temple, so I'm hoping that God doesn't notice my absence. Otherwise, the house is going to fall on. I'm going to read one of my alliterative poems, and it happened to have been published in Survision. Thank you, Tony Kitt. And it's called D is Not Only for Dada. Disco is decidedly dead, and so is democracy. Dystopian day dawning. Destination, darkness, my darlings. Would you do it with Dylan? Dilly-dally with Dolly? Dalliances with Dickinson, Doolittle, Dawn, and Desnos? Drop drawers with Da Vinci or double dip with Degas, even though they're defunct? Dance dirty with De Gaulle, even though he's deceased? Do-si-do with the devil, then do the downward dog on your derriere and doze deeply. Did you dig Howdy Doody in your heyday? We decent do-gooders and daydreamers are damn disgusted and disgruntled with this diseased and dysfunctional domain of dimwits, dodos, dopes, dorks, dullards, dunces, and dangerous dumbcoughs. Okie dokie, daddy, let's depart Dodge City and drive to Denmark. And don't you dare discuss a defense for the dastardly Donald who did so much dreadful damage to our daily discourse. Don't do that. Don't even. Oh dear, this stinky ditty is definitely done. Now vote blue, everyone.
I knew there'd be a Donald in there when it started with a D. That was awesome, Cindy. We love you on lip balm. I think lip balm is temple in some ways, if that's not totally out of control to say. All right, we can't end a lip balm without having Bob from the kitchen. I mean, he gives us his sage words. We don't know what they're going to be. There might be a bear. He might sing. I'm unsure. It's sometimes information and then it's not. Bob, what's coming out of the kitchen today?
Actually, something that I never do, something I wrote a couple of hours ago.
What?
I never read anything new, so
hot off the press.
that's new. What? What we see is the man who is not yet a bear, the sky that is not yet a garden. What we see are the footsteps left by the night before the stars could intervene.
You should write more before lip balm. That was a cracker. We had so much good stuff in there and a bear. So I loved it even more. There is no other way to progress in my day without thinking about Bob's little morsel for us at the end of each lip balm. So it's over to you, Mark.
Well, of course, we have Lip Balm Part 2 tomorrow, which includes Andrew Joron, who was here today, Anne Caldwell from Ireland, Uncle Milo, Serpent Woman, Nadina Karasik, Claire Benzadon, Kenneth Carroll, Hedgehoggy, who knows who that is, John Bradley, Daniel Nestor, and Will Alexander. But before we move on to that, let me read you one final poem, which is called An Offshoot. 3 moonless nights, and the coyotes are out at dawn. Somewhere in the ocean the eels are lost, turning into seaweed. And we shall see you tomorrow. Lots of love and happiness and poetry and, you know, super sex for everybody.
Not a better wish is there than poetry and super sex. I'll go with that.
See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow.
Better than clam guts and mangosteen. I'll put it out there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Too.